Chosen one, welcome to your season of undeniable radiance. The most dangerous force alive is a human being who survived everything designed to destroy them and emerged glowing. That is your current reality. You're the hottie everyone's been talking about. People from the past want to rush back into your orbit because your new energy is impossible to ignore. You are no longer the person they left. You are the revelation they can't stop watching. There was a chapter in your life that even you do not fully love to revisit. Everything seemed to be moving in the wrong direction at the same time. Doors were closing, people were leaving, plans were unraveling. And that particular silence, the kind that follows when people who claim to believe in you suddenly have nothing to say, that silence carried a real and specific weight. People watched that chapter unfold. They watched it and drew their conclusions. Some quietly celebrated what they saw. Some said nothing and let their absence speak for them. Some even offered small words of comfort while privately deciding that this was confirmation of what they always suspected, that you had been reaching too high, and this was simply reality pulling you back down to size. In their minds they wrote the ending. Clean, final, decided, and here is what they never saw coming. You did not end. You did not crumble the way that season suggested you would. You did not come out smaller, more broken, or more willing to accept less. You came out forged. The same way a star does not vanish when it collapses under pressure. It explodes into something so bright, it rewrites the sky around it. You took every single thing that was meant to bury you, and used it as raw material. Betrayal became discernment. Loss became clarity. Silence became the training ground, where you learned to be still enough to hear what you were actually built for. This is the first thing you need to own, not as a feel-good affirmation, but as a fact. The season they were sure had finished you was actually finishing their ability to define you, limit you, or predict your ceiling. You were not collapsing, you were being constructed, and the construction looked like wreckage to people who did not know what was being built inside it. Everything that comes next flows from that single fact. Remember it. Fast forward to now. Watch how everything shifts. You enter a space, and something changes. It is subtle enough that you might have second-guessed it the first few times. People look up. Conversations adjust. Eyes linger a beat longer than they need to. Nobody can quite identify why, because on paper, nothing should be that dramatically different. But in atmosphere, in energy, in the thing that lives just beneath what the eye can observe, everything has changed. What people are feeling has a name. It is not confidence alone, though you have that. It is not physical attractiveness alone, though you have that too. It is evidence. Your glow is the physical receipt of every storm you walked through, every night you rebuilt yourself with no audience, every time you chose to get up when staying down would have been completely reasonable. All of it is now written on you in a frequency that people cannot see but absolutely feel. Your transformation has sealed itself into who you are. It carries weight, presence, and authority. It is not cosmetic. It is not a mood or a passing phase. It is permanent. That is why you have become the conversation happening in spaces you are not physically in. You are the name that keeps surfacing in circles you left behind. You are the reference point people reach for when they try to describe what it looks like when someone levels up in a way that defies every prediction placed on them. Think about what it truly means to be the one everyone is talking about. Not just in the physical sense, though. Yes, because transformation from the inside always surfaces on the outside eventually. The real heat radiating off you right now is not only aesthetic, it is existential. It is the heat of someone who burned through their lowest season and came out radiating something that cannot be manufactured or faked. That is the kind of magnetism that makes people stop mid-sentence and return to a conversation about you long after it ended, still working to get the full picture. The attention landing on you is not the performance of attention. It is the involuntary kind, the kind that people cannot fully control even when they want to. When something is genuinely magnetic, proximity to it creates a pull that operates below the level of conscious decision. People do not decide to think about you. They simply find you already there in their thoughts, in their conversations, in the quiet moments when noise dies down and something honest rises to the surface. That involuntary quality is the tell-all. It is how you know this is real and lasting, not a trend, not a moment. It is the natural consequence of what you built in private, finally becoming visible to everyone at once. And the people from your past, who are now circling back, they are reacting to the same pull that everyone else is reacting to, except for them, it carries an additional dimension. Because they had access to you before the glow became undeniable, they were present before the transformation was visible to the world. Which means what they are experiencing now is not just fascination, it is reckoning. They are not just encountering someone magnetic, they are encountering someone they believed they had completely figured out, and watching you become exactly what their beliefs said was not possible. That is a very specific experience. It is making them move in ways they may not even fully understand themselves. Hold on to this, because it is about to go deeper. If these words stirred your consciousness, hype this video to help more chosen ones awaken to this. Now comes the part that brought you here, the thing you felt before you could articulate it in words. The off-frequency energy of people from your past suddenly reappearing with warmth, sweetness, and a level of attention they withheld from you when you were in the actual fire. They are back, and they are coming back fast. Here is what you need to understand before making any decisions about what their return means. Their return is not the main event. Their return is the evidence. It is confirmation of something that has already happened inside you, something that cannot be undone, reversed, or negotiated. You have become someone they cannot afford to have walked away from, and their instincts know it, even when their pride refuses to admit it. But this is exactly where chosen ones get tripped up, because what gets said upon return sounds reasonable, it sounds warm, it sounds like maybe something has genuinely shifted inside the person returning. Memories get invoked, the language of connection gets deployed, the gap of time gets framed as something that happened to both of you equally, a neutral silence you both participated in rather than a choice they made, and that you survived alone. Do not let the sweetness of the return obscure the mechanics of it. Notice how the re-entry actually unfolds. It rarely arrives all at once. That would be too obvious and too easy to read. It comes in layers, a reaction after a long silence, a message casual enough to seem like no big deal. If warmth is extended in response, the next move gets slightly closer and the conversation grows slightly longer. Each step is carefully designed to feel organic, as though reconnection is happening naturally, rather than someone working deliberately toward access they forfeited. Notice also what does not get said. There is no acknowledgement of the disappearance, no ownership of the silence, no honest reckoning with what that absence actually cost you. Instead, the focus stays firmly in the present, on how well things appear to be going, on shared memories worth revisiting, on anything that keeps the conversation moving forward, rather than honest about what sits behind it. That careful steering away from the past is not accidental. It is the instinct of someone who knows that an honest examination of what happened would make the reunion they are reaching for significantly harder to achieve. The past gets navigated around, and if you are not paying close attention, you can find yourself deep in a comfortable exchange without ever having addressed what actually occurred between you. Watch the steering. The real information lives not in what gets said, but in what gets consistently and carefully left out. Chosen ones, they never expected this, and they really didn't expect us to keep talking. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels disappearing, videos pulled, voices scrubbed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. And now we have something they truly can't: silence. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. Join Destiny Engine, and you're supporting your favorite channels while leveling up yourself at the same time. It's a 360 win. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicity stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones, press play. That's all. For $7 you switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. Stay with this, because this is where clarity really lands. When someone says they miss you, or implies it, or makes every gesture that signals it without using the words, what they are describing is not you. What they are describing is a feeling they had when they had access to you. And those two things are not even close to the same. Think about what you gave when you were present in someone's life. You were the one who lifted the energy when things got heavy. You were the one who showed up. You made the world lighter, warmer, and more navigable for the people around you. You were the soft landing after hard moments, the fuel that kept someone else's engine running, often without realizing how much you were doing it. And right now, living without that fuel, something is getting exposed that was being papered over for a long time. Without your energy as a buffer, the emptiness that was always sitting underneath the surface becomes impossible to avoid. That inner quiet they could not stand becomes unavoidable, and the instinct is to come back to the place where that quiet used to disappear. That is what gets framed as missing you. Not you specifically. The running, the relief, the comfort of not having to sit with themselves, because you were always there making everything easier. Here is the revelation inside the revelation. There is a world of difference between someone who comes back because they have done the genuine work of becoming worthy of your presence, and someone who comes back because your absence made their life harder, and they want the easier version restored. Real love does the internal work first and then returns, slowly, humbly, earning its way back in. Convenience skips the work entirely, and bets that the warmth of its return will be enough for you to set aside what came before it. Strip away everything you provided. Strip away the showing up, the energy given, the encouragement poured out without condition. Strip all of that away and ask yourself honestly, what exactly would remain for someone to miss? For most people circling back without accountability, the answer is very little, because the attachment was never to who you are at the core. It was to how you made life feel when they had access to you. That is not love. That is dependency dressed in affection's clothes, and you are too clear now to let that distinction pass you by. Here is where the power dynamic shifts completely, and it shifted without you having to fight for it. The same voices that once called you ordinary are now the ones whispering about your mystery. That is not a small thing. It is a massive reversal, and it happened not because you convinced anyone of anything, not because you campaigned for recognition or demanded credit. It happened because you became something their original assessment of you had no space for. When people believed they had you figured out, they felt safe. They could label you, reduce you, file you away as predictable. They held the pen, and you were simply a character in the version of events they were narrating for themselves. And then you took the pen back. Not in one dramatic moment. Quietly, consistently, over a sustained period of choosing yourself, choosing growth, and choosing the harder path when the comfortable one would have kept you manageable but small. Decision by decision, you rewrote the outcome they had already decided on. Now the ending they scripted does not match what is actually happening. Their prediction expired, their conclusion was wrong, and they cannot reconcile the person now standing before the world with the person they were so confident they had calculated completely. That gap between who they declared you were and who you actually are has turned them into observers, fascinated, unsettled, slightly rattled observers who cannot locate the explanation they keep reaching for. Because the explanation lives inside your private process, inside the work you did when no one was watching, inside the seasons they wrote you off while you continued, quietly becoming. They forfeited their right to the explanation the moment they lost interest in the journey. All they get now is the result, and the result is making them deeply, unavoidably restless. Pay close attention here, because this is where even perceptive people get caught off guard. A significant portion of the attention arriving from your past right now is not what it presents itself as. On the surface it looks like admiration, compliments, warmth, interest spilling out generously, but beneath the sweetness, something hollow sits, something that does not fully ring true. What you are sensing is desire that has curdled. It is admiration with a bitter undercurrent. It is flattery that, stripped of its packaging, is a sophisticated form of envy, reaching toward something it cannot possess. What lives underneath that flattery is not love. It is the hunger to understand you, to dissect you, to extract the formula, to study you like an unsolved equation. The frustration of not being able to solve you is what keeps driving the obsession. Your glow, your confidence, the ease with which opportunity now finds you, all of it is fully visible. But the process that produced those results, that is completely inaccessible. The blueprint cannot be traced, the journey cannot be reverse engineered, and that inaccessibility is exactly what makes the fascination uncontrollable. Here is what is really happening underneath the surface. The desire is not for you as a whole person. It is for the outcome without the process, for the fire without the flames that created it, for the strength without the suffering that built it, for the peace without the reckoning that earned it. What you carry is not transferable. It is the direct result of everything you actually went through, not a strategy that can be copied, not a technique that can be installed. It lives in the private seasons of rebuilding. It lives in the choosing to keep going when nothing external confirmed that going was the right call. It lives in the refusal to become bitter when bitterness would have been the completely understandable response that cannot be extracted and handed to someone else, no matter how close they manage to get. So when the flattery lands, do not let its warmth navigate for you. Desire rooted in envy is not a foundation for anything real. It is hunger performing as connection, and the truth underneath all of it is that what is being sought is not a relationship with you, it is an imitation of what you have become. Since that is impossible to achieve by proximity alone, that wanting will always carry a shadow that eventually reveals itself. You have the clarity to see the shadow now. Use it. Your transformation functions as a mirror, and no one who spent meaningful time in your orbit can escape what it reflects back at them. Every time evidence of your rise surfaces, every time your name comes up in conversation, every time your momentum becomes visible, anyone who once had a front-row position to your life and chose not to show up for it gets confronted with something deeply uncomfortable. Not just your growth, their own reflection. You became living proof that the gap between who they are and who they always said they were going to be is not a matter of timing, luck, or circumstance. It is a matter of accumulated choices, specific, daily choices that either build something extraordinary over time or quietly confirm that the life getting postponed will continue getting postponed. Your peace becomes a direct contrast to their internal noise. Your clarity becomes a direct contrast to the confusion they have been managing. Your forward momentum becomes a direct contrast to the procrastination they have been protecting. You are not doing any of this deliberately. You are simply living your life fully, but a life lived fully and authentically, after everything you endured, preaches without speaking. And that is precisely what makes it impossible to ignore and uncomfortable to witness up close. Some will respond with subtle dismissiveness about your progress. Some will poke small holes in your momentum. Some will go quiet and distant. None of those responses are actually about you. All of them are about what your existence forces other people to face about themselves. You did not take anything from anyone. You did not block a single path or steal a single opportunity. You simply did the work, stayed the course, and honored the process. And your life has become the living testimony that the path they abandoned was real, and that walking it produces something genuine that cannot be faked from the outside. That is a truth they cannot turn away from, no matter how hard they try. When you were close, available, and giving without hesitation, you were treated as though you were ordinary. Your presence was assumed. Your energy was consumed without acknowledgement. Your consistency was mistaken for an unlimited resource, rather than a deliberate choice being made by a person with real, finite value. Because access to you came without effort or cost, the human instinct to assign worth based on scarcity simply never activated. What is always available tends to get treated as background. What is always present tends to stop being seen. Then the access changed. Whether through your own decision to protect your energy, through the natural drift of changed circumstances, or through the growth that quietly made old dynamics no longer fit, the signal dropped. And what followed was completely predictable, even if those experiencing it could not see it clearly in the moment. The energy that had been dismissed became the thing being ached for. The comfort that had been taken for granted began to feel like a luxury that was no longer available on demand. The ease of having you in someone's corner, something that had been treated as furniture, as background, revealed itself as something rare, and rare things carry weight that only becomes fully understood in their absence. You were always priceless. That is not a new development. What is new is that the people who benefited most from your presence and gave the least in return have now run out of the insulation that was allowing them to avoid that truth. The truth is arriving late and unwelcome, landing with the full force of everything that was denied about it for so long. Your distance is not a punishment, and it is not cruelty. It is simply the honest communication of value that your previous openness was underpricing. A chosen one operating in their power does not negotiate their worth downward for the comfort of people who are unprepared to meet it. The scarcity they are experiencing is not something being done to them. It is the correction of a misrepresentation they benefited from for far too long. Let the correction do its full work. That is not your burden to manage. That is their education to receive. When someone who once treated you as ordinary begins treating you as rare, the instinct is to focus on the compliment. Resist that instinct long enough to look at what lives underneath it. Desperation has a specific texture. It does not arrive calmly. It does not accept silence gracefully. It escalates when ignored. It reframes its approach when one entry point does not produce results. It surfaces across multiple channels. A direct message in one place, a comment in another, a reach through a mutual connection when the direct path stays quiet. It presents itself in ways that could easily be mistaken for passion or devotion, for someone finally waking up to what they lost. But genuine growth, when it returns, does not look or feel like that. Genuine growth returns carefully. It listens far more than it talks. It comes prepared to earn rather than simply prepared to want. It tolerates slowness and silence because it understands that trust is rebuilt through sustained behavior over time, not through the urgency of a feeling. What returns with pressure is not growth. What returns with pressure is someone attempting to resolve their own discomfort as quickly as possible by restoring the access that removed that discomfort. The urgency circling you right now has nothing to do with who you are as a person. It is entirely about what your absence forced someone to feel. And here is what that urgency is revealing, whether it intends to or not. Your life right now, your actual daily ongoing life, is visibly better than what anyone predicted it would be without them in it. That visibility is what generated the urgency in the first place. If your absence had produced the deterioration they expected, there would be no urgency. The urgency exists because the deterioration never came, because you did not need saving, because you did not stay broken in the way that would have confirmed their assumptions about you. You rose instead, and that rising became impossible to watch from a distance without feeling the full weight of what was forfeited. Let the urgency be information. Let the repeated attempts confirm what they are confirming. You were never the problem in what ended. You were the asset. And the only thing that changed is that the value of that asset is now undeniable, at a scale that leaves no margin for rationalization. They always sensed it. They simply believed you would be easier to reclaim than you are turning out to be. There is a hidden motivation running beneath a significant portion of the sudden interest in your life right now, and it has nothing to do with genuine connection or love. Your presence has become currency. Being associated with you, even superficially, even just through a shared exchange or a mention in the right conversation, does something specific for the image of the person seeking it. It lets people present a version of themselves that their own choices do not actually support. If proximity can be established now, the past can be softened, and the narrative can be adjusted. Someone who was absent during your building season can stand next to you in your harvest season and let that proximity imply loyalty that was never once demonstrated when it would have cost something to give it. What gets sought is the association, the credibility that comes from being seen in your orbit, because standing next to your light functions as a shortcut to a respect that their own character and accumulated choices have not earned for them. The most significant irony embedded in all of this is that these are often the same people who, not long ago, would have confidently declared you were not worth much. The same voices that went quiet when your dreams needed someone to speak up for them. The same people who were absent during the entire process and are now extremely interested in the product. Their tone has completely changed, but not because they have changed. Their tone shifted because you have, and more precisely, because the world can now see that undeniably, being next to you and being genuinely for you are two entirely different things. One is strategic positioning. The other requires investment, sacrifice, and the willingness to show up when it costs something. The return of people who want the first without offering the second is not something you are obligated to receive warmly, simply because the delivery arrives wrapped in warmth. You have grown past being someone else's accessory. You have risen too far to let yourself be used as borrowed credibility by people who never contributed to the building of yours. When people from your past return, especially those who caused real damage, there is always something specific happening beneath the surface of the re-entry. Something they are hoping your warmth and your capacity for connection will quietly absorb before you consciously register it. They want proximity, without cost. Facing what was actually done, the neglect, the disrespect, the convenient disappearance at every moment that mattered, would require sitting in a discomfort that pride simply cannot tolerate. It would require saying plainly, "I was wrong, this is how, and I take full responsibility for it." For people whose sense of self depends on never being the one who got it wrong, that level of honesty is not something they can access. So reunion gets attempted as a shortcut. The return itself gets offered as though it is the apology. The warmth of showing back up gets presented as though it retroactively cancels everything that happened before it. The implicit ask is that you receive the present version of this person without requiring any honest accounting of the past version. Reunion without accountability is not healing. It is comfort-seeking, wearing the costume of reconciliation. It is someone working to resolve their internal guilt, not by confronting it honestly, but by restoring the relationship that would make the guilt quieter and easier to live with. Real reconciliation, the kind actually worth your energy, requires truth to be spoken plainly. It requires the person returning to look at what they actually did and own it without deflecting or minimizing. It requires the humility to sit in the discomfort of what their choices cost you without immediately redirecting toward what they need from you now. Anything less than that is not a return worth welcoming. It is the same cycle presenting itself with friendlier packaging and a warmer opening. You have come too far and rebuilt yourself with too much intention and care to hand access back to someone whose return is fundamentally about their comfort rather than your flourishing. The door is not permanently sealed, But truth is the price of entry, and anyone genuinely ready to walk back in will pay that price without needing to be asked twice. In a world where almost everything can be filtered, performed, purchased, or curated into something resembling the real thing, you stand as something that cannot be touched by any of those tools. Appearances can be altered, credentials can be stacked, social proof can be engineered with enough time and resources. An image can be constructed so carefully that it almost convinces even the person constructing it, but none of that creates what you carry. Because what you carry was not assembled in comfort. It was not produced through strategy, positioning, or careful image management. It was forged in the actual fire of your actual life. The wisdom in you came from genuine loss. The peace radiating off you came from genuine reckoning with hard things. The authority in how you move through the world came from being pressed all the way down and choosing again and again not to collapse. That specific combination, forged through that specific lived experience, cannot be replicated, purchased, or extracted from you and transferred to someone else, regardless of how close they manage to get. This is exactly why the fascination around you keeps intensifying the harder people try to explain you. Something real gets felt in your presence, something that cannot be identified or traced back to a single visible source. And in that gap between what can be felt and what cannot be explained, fixation grows. People orbit, people study, people attempt imitation that always lands slightly flat, because the essence is not on the surface. The essence is in what you actually survived. You are not just carrying something they cannot manufacture. You are something they cannot manufacture. The glow is not a product. It is the evidence of a life that refused, at every turning point, to let hardship have the final word. You receive what is returning from the position of someone who sees it with complete clarity. You recognize that desire is not the same as worth. You recognize that a return is not the same as growth. You hold the standard that says access to who you are now requires truth, accountability, and a demonstrated willingness to show up differently, not just a willingness to show up. You protect what you have built, not from bitterness, not from fear, but from the sovereign knowledge of someone who knows exactly what it cost to build, and exactly who has earned the right to its warmth. Your glow was never about them, and it was never for them. It is evidence of a higher design working through your life, taking every collapse, every betrayal, every closed door, every silent season, and using all of it as construction material for something that cannot be bought, faked, replicated, or taken. Chosen ones do not dim because someone else is uncomfortable with their brightness. They do not shrink to make people feel better about the choices those people made. They do not negotiate their standards downward for returns rooted in convenience rather than transformation. They rise, and they keep rising, not to prove anything to anyone, but because rising is simply what happens when the fire that was designed to destroy you builds you instead. Let the people from your past watch. Let them whisper. Let them circle. You walk forward, head level, fire fully intact, standards immovable, worth undeniable. You are the sun they ran from, and now they cannot stop squinting. That is not the beginning of their chapter about you. That is the end of yours about them. Rise,